What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on for Mike here, coming at you with a special episode of the FCS Dynasty using NCAA 06, and it also features that NCAA Next mod as well. And we got a very special episode on our hands. We have seen over the last 16 plus weeks of game action, 119 teams compete for the opportunity to compete for a national championship. But for tonight, most of those dreams are going to come to an end. Tonight, we will see the 24 teams that will go ahead and go to the FCS playoffs and ultimately compete for a national championship. So, if you guys are excited about this episode, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you have to be brand new, you love FCS football or NCAA gaming. And before I go ahead and start reviewing the bracket, I want to kind of give you guys a reminder of how the FCS playoff bracket is structured. I did mention in the past that there is 24 teams that will make the playoffs. Now, how it will work is that the top 8 teams that are seeded in this tournament, they will automatically get a first round bye. They will not have to worry about a first round game. They automatically move on to the second round. As for seeds 9 through 24, those teams would go and play up against each other in the first round, and they would have, a longer journey to the national championship. But as we've seen in this series, particularly in year number 1, you don't have to get a first round bye in order to win that national championship. There's multiple ways to get there. And also, for those that do not make the FCS playoffs, they do not get a bowl game. It's either you go to the playoffs here in this Dynasty universe, or you don't get to experience any playoff action at all. So, with those ground rules laid, let's go ahead. Let's not waste any more time. Let's start reviewing the top 8 seeds that will be going to the second round automatically. So we will start with the team that is the number 1 seed in this bracket, San Diego State. Now, San Diego State, they finished undefeated once again in the regular season. They are led by their freshman quarterback, Ryan Vaughn, who has really had a stellar season, 3,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Not too shabby for his first year on the field. Now, Vaughn did have his Heisman hopes affected probably by how their schedule shook out. They were done with the regular season very early, and he did not have a conference championship game either. So, I mean, he had an impressive season all, but just having that long bye did end up affecting them. But San Diego State, once again, they're going to try to go ahead and try to make a deep playoff run. They were upset last year in the second round by UL Monroe. They're looking for their first national championship, and they will start this journey as number 1 overall seed. Garnering the number 2 overall seed in the FCS bracket this year, we have the Rice Owls, who did also finish undefeated here in the regular season, and they had a great conference championship game. You saw that 40-point blowout against Eastern Carolina. That really helped solidify that they are a legitimate team to play up against this year. Now, they are also having to be led by their quarterback, Robert Johnson, who had nearly 3,000 yards of total offense this year, 26 touchdowns, and he doesn't have a single turnover. The entire season, he has been having a great year. He ends up winning the Heisman Trophy as well. So this is going to be a very dangerous football team. Rice, I don't believe, made the playoffs in year number 2, but in year number 1, we did see the Rice Owls get a top 8 seed. But what happened to them in that year number 1, they lost to Montana in the second round. So, another team that has history of getting a top 8 seed, but has not been able to make a deep run yet. We'll see if that changes here this upcoming season. Congratulations to Rice, though, on the number 2 seed. Maintaining their spot as the number 3 seed, we got the James Madison Dukes. Now, they are the first at-large team to make it into the FCS playoffs this year, as they did end up losing a couple of games one of which was to New Hampshire for losing out on the conference title. But that being said, they are a very talented team as well. They have a very explosive offense in particular. Despite having a brand new quarterback, they got some weapons. Jody Gentry, David Forn, Kevin Crum, also Brad Odrauzi, and even Jonathan Henderson. There's a lot of weapons for James Madison to work with, and they're going to get some time to rest up, get 100% healthy as they are right now, and they will go ahead and secure themselves into the second round already. James Madison with that number 3 seed. Moving on to number 4, we have the North Dakota State Bison, who are also the champions of the Pac-10 Conference. They have one of the best rushing attacks in all of FCS college football, led by Ken Anderson, who has 1,200 yards on the ground, as well as 17 touchdowns, also rushes for 10 yards a carry. Plus, they have one of the best defenses in America as well. They have a top 5 defense in terms of yards allowed per game, but we know that North Dakota State can do a fantastic job in the regular season. There has never been any doubt about that. That being said, though, their questions have always come in the postseason while we've ran this Dynasty universe. In the first 2 years, they have made the playoffs in both year 1 and year number 2, but they were both early exits in the FCS playoffs. So is this the year that we see North Dakota State make a run? Or are we going to see them make an exit in the second round once again? We'll have to wait and see. But for now, North Dakota State will also punch its ticket to the second round automatically. Speaking of playoff success, though, this program has had a lot of it in this series. The Kent State Golden Flashes secured a number 5 seed after they took care of business in the MAC Conference Championship, beating Central Michigan by a touchdown. Kent State, we know what they're capable of. They have won 2 consecutive national championships so far in this series, and for their attempt to go for a three-peat, a very rare thing to do in any athletic sport, Kent State, they will start off in the second rounds. They get that number 5 seed. They got a pretty balanced offense. Tyrell Williams at quarterback, he's that 26-9 guy. Kevin Robinson is the tailback for the Golden Flashes, 1,100 yards, 15 touchdowns as well. They are a pretty complete football team. Maybe not as talented on paper as what they used to be, but they are still a dangerous team, and you certainly cannot count them out considering the championship experience that is on this roster. So Kent State, they got the 5th seed. For the number 6 seed, though, in the FCS playoffs, we now have the Eagles of Georgia Southern. And you want to talk about an emphatic finish to their season. They blow out Sam Houston State in order to send a message. Almost got a Heisman Trophy for Arcata Woods, but wasn't meant to be. He was there in that Heisman finalist conversation, but he's hanging in there in the number 6 overall seed. Another SEC title for the Georgia Southern Eagles, as they will get the chance to, see some action in the first round before they have to start worrying about playing some football once again. Again, a really great rushing attack. Arcata Woods, one of the most dynamic players in all of college football, but he has also not been able to bring a national championship home to Georgia Southern. Does that change this year? They have done a better job of managing their expectations. One really surprising loss, but that's really about it. But Georgia Southern, man, they're a dangerous football team as well, and they're going to be part of a really exciting FCS playoffs that I think we're going to have this upcoming season. Speaking of some teams that might have some interest for sure, we have the Temple Owls that get the number 7 overall seed in the FCS tournament. Now, that being said, there's certainly some questions about Temple. We want to talk about a team that might have benefited from a lighter schedule. The Owls do benefit from that. We did see them play one time in actual gameplay, and that was when they had a ranked top 25 matchup with UCF, which they did win that game. However, we're going to see what this Temple squad is capable of, right? UCF maybe have been a little bit overrated, a little bit hyped up in the preseason polls, but other than that, they didn't play anybody ranked or anyone that may have been capable of going to the FCS playoffs, but they control what they do control. They finished 10-1, and that is deserving enough to get themselves a top 8 seed. So they do get a bye to the second round. I do have some questions about Temple that I'm sure are going to be answered pretty concretely once we get into the thick of things in the FCS playoffs. But for now, congratulations to Temple on making it to the FCS tournament once again. And finally, we have the final team that will get a bye into the second round. We got the Utah State Aggies. Utah State, they are champions of the WAC conference. We most recently saw them in a de facto WAC championship game against New Mexico State that found themselves down by multiple touchdowns going into the final quarter, but they found a way to rally back and they win it by a touchdown on the road. Slater, he's the quarterback for Utah State. He does a great job taking care of the football. 29 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and that was big for Utah State. That was really the difference in that game between them getting this first round bye and maybe not even making it to the FCS playoffs, considering they were ranked number 17. They were right on the bubble at that point, right? So that was a really crucial game, and Utah State, they were able to pull it out. Plus, they got a little bit of lady luck on their side with what did happen in conference championship weekend, and they were able to slip into that last number 8 seed, and that's one less game that they got to worry about as they're still trying to get 100% healthy. They do have an injury at middle linebacker position. He is the leader of that defense from an emotional standpoint. But yeah, man, that is going to wrap up the top 8 teams that get a first round bye. And now we're going to see the remaining 16 teams that will go to the first round of the FCS playoffs. So now that we're into reviewing those first round matchups, the first one that we will witness is between number 17 seeded Central Michigan and the SMU Mustangs, who have garnered that number 16 overall seed. Now, Central Michigan, they actually did have a really good season, 10-1 prior to going to the conference championship. They do end up going ahead and losing to the defending national champions. So that does make them number 17. They did fall pretty dramatically from the polls. But SMU, they got a little bit lucky. SMU, they are 7-4 on the season, but they did finish the year on a 3-game winning streak. And SMU, they have made the playoffs a couple of times here in this series already. So what that is going to happen is that they're going to get a chance, to prove themselves. Maybe they're relying on that brand a little bit to make it to the playoffs. I don't know. You guys can let me know down in the comments or in the live chat if you're watching this right now. But with that being said, I think this will be a close game. I think this will be a fun game to start the playoffs. And the winner of this game will go play against the number 1 seeded San Diego State squad in the second round. But after that, we will see a team that was ranked number 1 in the country until their dramatic upset that came from Delaware. And not only did that potentially steal a bid from one of these at-large teams, but what did also happen is that New Hampshire, they were moved all the way down to number 9 in the country. So that means they have to go through the first round now, and they will take on the team that, what's going to keep it 100% honest, you guys, they are here because of NCAA sanctions. Chattanooga did not win the Big 12, but they played up against a team that was under NCAA sanctions and were not eligible for the NCAA playoffs here, even if they won the Big 12 championship. But Chattanooga is a division leader, and they are the number 24 seed in this bracket. Because of that, they got a lot of things to prove. They got to prove that, Chattanooga can compete with New Hampshire, just because, looking at it on paper, it looks like New Hampshire is going to be a heavy favorite, but we were saying similar stuff about that Delaware game. So, New Hampshire, they can be beaten. It is possible any given Saturday. That's really what the mantra is around here, and I think that definitely holds true even in this series. I think there's a lot of parity, even though we have seen the same national champion up to this point, but that could always change here in year number 3. That being said, I do believe that New Hampshire should win this game pretty convincingly in this one, and they will take on Utah State in the second round. That is, whoever ends up winning this game. Following that game, we will have the 20-seeded Montana Grizzlies go up against the number 13 seed Akron Zips. Now, Akron did not win the wagon wheel, and that prevented them from competing for a conference championship. So they are on a 1-game losing streak, but they did play 12 games. They are definitely battle hardened. They played against North Carolina A&T, who actually ends up being a little bit better than what people are expecting. They're taking on a Montana squad who is one of 2 teams from the Pac-10 conference that did make it to the FCS playoffs here. It should be a pretty even game. Could very well be a defensive ball game. Both teams employ superior defenses with, some questions on the offensive side of the ball. I know they're both top 20 offenses in the country, but with that being said, they're both not very consistent offenses, given what they are in comparison to what their points per game says, right? So it's going to be an interesting game. I think it'll end up being a little bit of a defensive battle here, but I'm looking at Akron to potentially win this game, probably by 1 possession now that I'm thinking about it. Now, whoever does win this game will take on the other team that is representing on behalf of the Pac-10 Conference, North Dakota State, in the second round. Following that matchup, we will have the number 21 seeded UNLV Rebels take on the number 12 seed Southeast Missouri State, representing for the Big Ten Conference, one of 3 teams. Definitely some intrigue between both squads. UNLV, for starters, they finished the year on a high note. They are riding a 3-game winning streak into this matchup. But that being said, UNLV is also a team that has benefited from NCAA sanctions that are happening around the FCS Dynasty. For example, Western Carolina was one of those schools that was ranked very highly regarded, but even though Western Carolina had an objectively better season than UNLV, Western Carolina can't go because they're also under NCAA sanctions. So that opened up an at-large spot for UNLV. They are going to be the last at-large team to make it in to the FCS playoffs, and they're going up against arguably one of the best defenses in college football at the FCS level, this Red Hawks defense that is full of talented freshmen and sophomores. It's a young defense. It's a very talented defense. And if the Red Hawks are going to make a deep run, it's going to be because of how great that defense is. The reason why they're not undefeated and ultimately not getting a top 8 seed, though, is that they did lose multiple times. When they do lose, it's usually because they have a really tough time scoring in those games. Most notably, the last loss that they had, which was against Eastern Kentucky, they lost 7-0. You can't win if you can't score. So if Southeast Missouri State gets bounced early, it's going to be because they can't manufacture anything on offense. But that being said, though, I'm looking at UNLV. I'm looking at this game. I'm thinking it's going to be a defensive-minded game. I think both offenses are going to struggle to score here. But I'm looking at the Red Hawks to pull it out just because of the sheer talent that they have on the defensive end. Now, whoever does win this game, they will move on to the second round to take on the 2-time defending national champions, the Kent State Golden Flashes. Now, earlier in this bracket review, I was talking highly about North Carolina A&T when it comes to Akron's non-conference schedule, because North Carolina A&T, they also will be making it to the FCS playoffs. They will go ahead and be the number 18 seed in this tournament, and they will take on New Mexico State. Now, New Mexico State, of course, was very close to winning the WAC this season. They did collapse there towards the end, but they did finish the year with the win, so they are 9-2, number 15 overall seed. I think New Mexico State, they're a fun football team to watch, and but they're going to be in it for a big competitive game. North Carolina A&T, while obviously not the most talented team on paper, they are a very gritty squad. They are definitely on an upward trajectory. I definitely like their future at the quarterback position. Smoke James is the backup. He's one of your guys' custom players, and I personally think he's more talented than Travis Byers in the limited action that he does receive. So they are definitely going to be on an upward trend. I would not be shocked to see North Carolina A&T in the playoffs more often as we progress through this series. But as for the course of this year, I just think New Mexico State just has more talent on paper than this other Aggies team from North Carolina right now. And because of that, I do think it will be a close game throughout, but I'll look for My prediction, New Mexico State to pull away. I think they'll win by a couple of touchdowns, but you never know what can happen in this beautiful world that is college football. Whoever wins this game will take on number 2 seeded Rice in the second round. Speaking of programs that are on the rise right now, we can't have that kind of conversation without talking about Eastern Kentucky. How about the bounce back that they have? Started the year 1-3, but they rattled off 7 straight wins. Now here they are making their first FCS playoff appearance as a automatic qualifier. They did end up winning the Big Ten championship, but they are going to get a pretty brutal draw here, even though they are the higher seed. They're taking on Eastern Carolina, 9-3 on the season, did compete for the Conference USA Championship, and this is Eastern Carolina. They're a very talented team on paper. They might have underperformed at times over the course of this season, particularly in that conference championship against Rice when they were blown out, but Eastern Carolina is still a very talented football team, and I think Eastern Kentucky, they are going to have their hands full against the Pirates. I think if there was going to be an upset here in the first round, I think it would happen here, particularly in this matchup. I just think Eastern Carolina is a better football team, but again, Eastern Kentucky, just like North Carolina A&T, they're both programs on the rise. They've recruited extremely well, although I think this year, Eastern Kentucky, I don't think they move past the first round, but you never know what could happen. Whoever does win this game, though, they will take on number 3 seed James Madison in the second round. So as I alluded to earlier, Delaware was the biggest shock of the conference championship weekend, and that was because Delaware beat New Hampshire. They take down the number 1 team in the nation, and what ends up happening is that Delaware, who wasn't even remotely considered for an at-large bid, they become an automatic qualifier. They move up to 7-5, and because they have a higher point differential than what we saw from Chattanooga, they do end up securing the 23 seed. Now, if they want to go ahead and keep playing for that national championship, they will have to pull off another upset here, which is certainly possible. You found a way to beat New Hampshire, so it's certainly in that realm of possibility to go ahead and do the same thing to Idaho. But Idaho is a good football team, though. They're ranked number 10. They do have the number 10 overall seed in this tournament. They were very close to winning the WAC conference as well. They were up there with Utah State, with New Mexico State as well. One of 3 teams to make it from that conference. So a good showing for the WAC in general. I think Idaho wins this game, but it should be competitive. I'm hoping we'll see what Delaware can do, as they are certainly the biggest Cinderella here in this FCS playoffs, at least in my opinion. That being said, whoever does win this game between Delaware and Idaho, they will, of course, advance to the second round, and they will take on the Temple Owls, who did secure that first round bye. And for the final FCS playoff matchup here in the first round, we got the Yale Bulldogs taking on Eastern Illinois. Now, first and foremost, congratulations to both teams, as both these squads will be making it to the FCS playoffs for the very first time here in this FCS dynasty. Yale representing for the Ivy League. They did win the automatic bid for that conference, beating Brown in an essential Ivy League championship game in the regular season. And Yale has rattled off 7 straight wins, including that win against Brown in particular. They will take on an Eastern Illinois squad who is ranked number 11 in the AP poll, so that's why they got that number 11 seed. And they're also on a hot streak as well. They have won their last 5 games after starting the season just 3-3, and looking very questionable to making it to the FCS playoffs in the first place. But here they are, barbecue on the titties. I'm excited for how both teams handle the playoff pressure, as neither team has any playoff experience. But either way, congratulations to both squads. I will give the initial edge to Eastern Illinois, but you never know until the games are actually played on the football field. The winner of this game will go on to the second round in order to take on Georgia Southern, who is the number 6 overall seed. So with all 24 teams and their respective matchups now revealed, let's go ahead and take a look at what the FCS playoff bracket is going to be looking like this year, and this is what that bracket will be looking like. Now, once again, I will have a bracket challenge here, and that will be linked down in the comment section. I will have that as a linked comment, and if you are interested in doing that, filling out a bracket for this upcoming season, go ahead, go to that link, fill out a bracket, and there's some incentives involved for those that do end up winning or finishing in second place, those that our channel members are usually accustomed to. So if you want to do the bracket challenge, that is going to be linked down. You can go ahead and check that out. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and hop into some teams that might be feeling some type of way even after all 24 teams have been revealed. Now, even though 24 teams are going to be bestowed an opportunity to play for the national championship here at the FCS level, it's a lot more than the 4-team playoff that's currently in place for the FBS college football level within Division 1. But even with 24 teams, there are a couple of teams out there that definitely felt like they got snubbed in this one. And we got to start with the 2 teams that are under NCAA probation and therefore are not going to participate in the FCS playoffs. Starting off with the number 18 team in the final regular season poll, we got Western Carolina, the Catamounts. They had a solid year, 8-3, and they were good enough to make it in as an at-large. But again, those NCAA sanctions right now, that does prevent them from going to the FCS playoffs this year. They're going to end on a rough note as well. They lose to the Delta Devils of Mississippi Valley State, so they will start season number 4 on a losing streak. So they're going to try to right the ship here. They will have one more year after this where they are going to be under the NCAA sanctions. As for the team that actually won the Big 12 conference, we got Texas Southern. Now, they did win the Big 12 championship against Chattanooga, so they should be the ones that have the automatic bid for the Big 12 conference. But again, same scenario for them. They are also under the 2-year sanction. They are currently dealing with that, so therefore they are also not allowed to participate in the FCS playoffs. And that is a shame because they would certainly have a higher seed than the actual automatic qualifier than Chattanooga, since Chattanooga is not even ranked in the AP Top 25. And what are the consequences of those actions? Well, for UNLV, they would have been out if it wasn't for the fact that Western Carolina was under NCAA sanctions. If Western Carolina was queen, then UNLV would have been on the outside looking in. But instead, what ends up happening is that because UNLV was doing the right thing and they were the last team out originally, they actually got that FCS playoff bid, not Western Carolina. So it's crazy how these NCAA sanctions do have an effect on the FCS playoff bracket at the end of the day. And that means there was a new team that did end up having a last team out mentality. And you know what that team was? Southern. The Southern Jaguars, number 24 in the country. They are one of the best 24 teams, but just from how that bracket looked and how, because Delaware did end up beating New Hampshire, so Delaware got the automatic bid. They did not climb into top 25. They effectively stole a bid from Southern. Now, Southern didn't have a great season by any means, 6-5, so the fact that they were ranked in the top 25 was a little bit of a surprise, a minor surprise, but they do beat Texas Southern. Last regular season game, it was a nice statement win for the program, just unfortunately didn't do enough in non-conference play to really distinguish themselves, and that slow start to the season is ultimately going to cost them. And finally, another team that did kind of end up getting screwed over, because there's 3 teams outside the top 25 that did end up making it into the FCS playoffs, is the University of Central Florida, number 25 in the nation. But with how things shaked out, they are not going to be able to compete for a national championship this season. So guys, that's going to wrap things up here for the FCS playoff reveal. Make sure you go ahead, check out the bracket challenge. We are going to compete, provide the opportunity for you guys that aren't channel members to go get that OG tier custom recruit, as well as a day 1 tier level custom recruit for free, because even though, you know, that channel membership program, it's there if you want to support me in a more personal way. But by all means, it's not one of those things where you have to be a channel member to support my channel. I'm never like that. I'm not going to provide like a pay gap to go ahead and, you know, have it there so that just for you to watch my stuff. But, you know, if you want to support me in a more personal way, that's what it's there for. There is some added benefits, such as having a direct say in this series, for example. So if you want to check that out, that is linked in the description, and it's right next to the subscribe button if you want to check that out. Speaking of subscribing, if you did enjoy this video as well, make sure to go ahead, smack that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you happen to be brand new, as next episode we will have the first round of the FCS playoffs here on NCAA 06. It's been a fun season. It's only going to get more entertaining, as now we're getting to the nitty-gritty stuff. We're getting to decide who wins the national championship. So I'll leave that for next time. We'll start narrowing down that playoff field through various playoff games. But until then, I hope you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.